the infantry, flanking tactics are not unusual with the horse soldiers. On the Confederate side, you can see an example of the first Confederate National Flag. Higher failure rate of ammunition on the Confederates. When the bombardment began, overall Union Artillery Commander Henry Hunt began to ride along his line. When he got to the far right, he found 11th Corps Commander Thomas Osborne. Commander Osborne next to him. Hancock's men are taking a beating down on the ground as you see before you. And he wants their morale to be maintained. And so he orders that his guns continue firing at the Confederates during the bombardment prior to Pickett's charge. The result is that when the Confederate infantry appears, Hancock's men will be out of long-range ammunition. So when the infantry appears, the artillery on the ends of the Union line will bombard the Confederates from the right and the left. That will force Pickett's charge and the men who make it to begin to crowd the center, and their line will begin to narrow as they approach Gettysburg Road. Fire is coming from their right towards the Round Tops and on their left from Cemetery Hill. In front of you, you can see the 2nd Corps flag with a blue trefoil. General Hancock's Corps. Hancock rides slowly along his lines where the men can see him. This part of Pickett's charge was designed to move forward and then move slightly to the left, then begin to turn, move straight forward again and back to the left. The idea is to deceive the Union troops as to where the main part of the attack is going to hit the Union line. At first, the Confederates are spread out about a mile. fun to watch the artillery. You can see there's about a 7 or 8 man crew. You have the piece out in front, the limber with the ammunition chest behind it. You got an ordnance officer who selects the ammunition. Gentleman brings up the ammunition to the front of the gun, hands it to gunner number 2. Gunner number 1 has already taken the sponge on the end of the rammer and dipped it into a bucket that hangs from hooks in the front of the gun. Dips the sponge into the bucket and then swabs out the barrel. That cools the barrel and helps to extinguish any sparks or embers from a previous shot. Then a fellow sticks a worm in with like a corkscrew on the end of the stick and pulls out any debris or soot or any remaining embers. At the back of the gun, at the top of the gun, there's a vent hole. Gunner number 3 places his thumb in a leather thumb stall, which is reinforced, and places his finger over the vent to keep the oxygen out. If you can make sure there's no oxygen in the tube, and you're swabbing out the front of the barrel with water, you can be pretty sure that there are no remaining sparks or embers in the barrel when you introduce the powder bag to the front. Once number 2 places the powder bag in the front, number 1 switches to the other end of the rammer. It's a hard wooden block, and with that he can ram the ammunition powder bag down. And later the 10, 12-pound cannonball will be brought up to the front, handed to number 2, places it in the muzzle. Number 1, at the end of the loop, up men into your posts, Pickett said to his men before the attack, and let no man forget today, Virginia. Imagine the courage it took to step out of those trees and into the accurate long-range Union cannon fire from right and left. At first, the Union troops had to admire what they were seeing. The gaps are created in the Confederate lines. The men move shoulder to shoulder and close the gaps. My God, they're dressing the lines as they move forward. The wide width of the attack, and suddenly the spreaders will begin to move toward the true objective. Copse of trees, Cemetery Ridge. The gaps created in the lines by the losses taken from the explosions will continue to narrow the Confederate line. The fire from the ends from the artillery makes the men crowd the center. And as the Confederates approach, their lines begin to narrow. By the time the Confederates reach the Emmitsburg Road, the width of their attack will be... Dress the lines, dress the lines. The 1st, 17th, 11th, 24th Virginia Regiment, members of this brigade. Veterans of 2 long years of bloody fighting in the war to this point. To this point, these Confederates have known little else than success in the war, fighting on home soil. But now, they're in Pennsylvania, on northern soil. Union soldiers know they have to hold their ground. Could mean the end of the war if they don't. Kemper's men begin to cross through the Cadore farm buildings, and suddenly moving out